Walk with me. Take my hand.
And welcome back to a special call Board of Education meeting for the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. And now for Chair Woodbury.
Good morning. Again, I'm Shay Woodbury, Chair of the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education. And again, welcome to the June 30th special called virtual Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education meeting. I'm going to again officially call our meeting to order since we're coming out of our closed session. Dr. Harrison, could you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Woodbury.
Present.
Lyda Calvert-Hayes. And Andrea Bramer.
Present.
Barbara Burr. Leah Crowley.
Present.
Dana Jones.
Present.
Deanna Kaplan. Elizabeth Motsinger.
Present.
And Marilyn Parker. Chair Woodbury, we have a quorum and we'll work to get the others. I see them online, but we'll work to get them logged back in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The first item on the agenda is the agenda review, and I think we need to amend the agenda. Is that correct, Dion?
Yes, ma'am. I believe there are 3 changes that need to be made to the agenda.
Okay, I only saw one.
The changes that I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Harrison.
Go ahead, you have them. Mm-hmm.
I believe the changes that need to be made are action item B, which is the approval of the 2021 calendar. Is asking that it be taken off and be recalendared as an action item at a later date. There needs to be an action item added for a vote to waive policy 9000 regarding public comments so that you could have public comments at your next special called board meeting. And then an action item needs to be added for the approval of a special called board meeting on July 7th.
So for the second action item, it's a vote to waive public comments or approve public comments?
No, ma'am, it's a vote to waive. The policy only allows for public comment to be once a month at your regular board meeting. So this would be to waive the policy so that you could have a public comment period during your special called meeting next week.
That policy that you said 9,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The bylaws.
Okay. Yeah. And what was the third one?
For the board to approve having a special called board meeting next Tuesday, July 7th.
All right. So we need to amend. Oh, someone. Okay, I'm getting
If we, yeah, we'll mute. Go ahead.
Okay. So, we need to amend the agenda one to remove action item B, which is for the approval of the 2021 calendar. We also need to add, an action item to, vote to waive policy 9,000 so that the public can have comments at our next special called meeting. And then also we need to add an action item so that the board can approve, for a special called meeting July 7th. Is there a motion to approve the amendment?
This is Elizabeth. I make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Board Member Crowley with a second.
If there are no further questions or discussion, Dr. Harrison, can you take the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Chair Woodbury,
Yes?
Lila Calvert Hayes, Andrea Bramer,
Yes.
Barbara Bird.
I apologize, I'm just coming in. What am I responding to at this time?
It's breaking it out. I can't hear anything.
So, Ms. Bird, we're taking a vote on the amended agenda, which means to remove the approval of the calendar, add some opportunity, add a waive for the policy 9,000 to waive the policy so we can have public comments at our next call board meeting, and then to have a call board meeting on the 7th. We're approving the agenda, amended agenda.
Thank you. My response is yes.
Thank you, and we apologize for that delay. So on our behalf, Leah Crowley,
Yes.
Dana Jones, Deanna Kaplan,
Yes.
Elizabeth Motsinger,
Yes.
and Marilyn Parker. Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next, agenda item is discussion items. And first we have budget transfer number 5 and amendment number 5 by Andrea Gillis, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Chair Woodbury,
Good
Board
morning.
Member Dr. Harrison. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
I'm going to share my screen. Okay, before you should see budget amendment and transfer number 5. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So this is our final budget amendment and transfer for the year. The first one is federal funds. This is the $16.9 million that we received in our CARES Act dollars that we're appropriating this fiscal year. These funds will carry over to next year. The next budget amendment is for the language acquisition grant. We got an additional $30,000 in that grant. We have an additional $54,000 budget amendment for Title I, and that is all for the federal grants for a grand total of $16.9 million. In the other restricted funds, we're appropriating $80,000 in capital outlay for driver's ed. They receive tuition, and we're just going to appropriate some of that so we can spend some of those funds this year. We also have a reduction in the United Way funds due to COVID-19 of $264,000. We have an additional budget amendment for school paid salaries to appropriate those funds for a grand total of $597,000 for other restricted funds. For our state public school fund, we received $2.9 million in coronavirus relief funds for child nutrition, and we also received $1.7 million in COVID-19 supplemental funds from the state. In our capital outlay funds, we had to appropriate $1.3 million for the payment that was made on the finance state bus purchases. That these buses were purchased last year. This is just appropriating the payment that the state made. then also one more amendment is appropriating $600,000 for the daycare programs at a couple schools that we have. And that's all for budget amendment number 5. Next, we go into transfers. On the local current expense fund, we're just aligning our budget to our expenditures. This is our final budget transfer for the year, just aligning up salaries, benefits, and expenses to what we actually spent for local current expense. And then we had that same sort of entry for state funds, just aligning the budget to what was actually spent. And those are all the budget transfers and amendments that we have. Are there any questions?
Ms. Gillis, this is Board Member Woodbury. Dana Jones is trying to get back in, so she may have some during the action item period, but right now she's trying to join to get back in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the end of the presentation for budget transfer number 5 and amendment number 5.
Okay, thank you. The next discussion item is the 2020-2021 calendars by Dr. Sam Mills, Chief of Staff.
Good morning, Chair Woodbury, board members, Dr. Hairston. Excited to come back and share the calendar with you. I think first it's probably appropriate for me to just give a quick apology. I think I created some confusion the other day by posting an older draft version of the calendar that we've been working on. There were a couple slight changes from what the public voted on, and from my understanding, it created a little bit of a social media stir. And so we got that corrected yesterday morning. Thanks to Board Member Jones for bringing it to my attention. I certainly apologize for any communication or confusion that caused. But hopefully this presentation and then the vote on July 7th will help clarify any further confusion. So our 2021 calendar, as you recall, you all had voted for a calendar, and we had legislation changes that caused us to, our calendar was no longer was in compliance with the calendar legislation. So we formed another calendar committee. This is the group of folks. You'll see a central office-based staff on the left, and then we had 4 principals and 3 different teachers providing really valuable feedback, lots of great discussion. We worked through many, many calendar options before we presented 2 options to you all at the work session. So just a reminder, the calendar rules, there is legislation that dictates how we establish our board calendar. The big one is 185 instructional days or 1,025 instructional hours. We always hit the instructional hours and not the days, because we usually have 180 days. And then this new legislation required us to start on August 17th and end no later than June 11th, and included a requirement for a minimum for 5 remote instruction days, and that was new. So in our district, we typically have 14 reserve days for teachers. That's to do report cards, that's for professional development, get the classroom set up, cleaned up at the end of the year, typical for us. And we have 180 instructional days for students. Our shortest instructional day in the district is 6.5 hours. So when you multiply 180 times 6.5, you see we get to 1,170 hours, which is way more than the state required 1,025. So 5 remote instruction days. These days are basically days that teachers provide instruction for students when they're out of the building. They can be professional day, workshop days for staff, as long as they provide some sort of learning on those remote days for students. And I think, we've kind of gotten pretty familiar with what remote instruction looks like over the last half of the previous school year. But required that we have at least 5 of these in our calendar, and you'll see that the calendar that was voted on, we had 8. So we had presented 2 calendar options to the board at the work session a couple weeks ago, and those options were posted on our website for voting on June 18th. closed the poll last Thursday on the 25th, so we had a week of voting. We had 7,775 folks cast a vote, and option 2 was the clear favorite from our stakeholders, with 51% of the vote, 10% had no preference, and 39% said option 1. So the distinguishing features of option 2 calendar was we had 4 reserve days to start the school year and then 3 reserve days to end it. We placed a remote learning week in February, which is sort of the peak of the flu season, just to give students a break, teachers a break from being around each other, and hopefully try to minimize the impact of any flu or other COVID-related illnesses. Spring break is the week of April 5th to 9th, so it's on the back end of Good Friday, kind of kicks it off, and then goes into the week of spring break. The last student day is June 9th, and there's 8 total remote instruction days built into this calendar. So one of those remote instruction days would be the election day, the presidential election, and then there's 2 leading up to Thanksgiving to give a full week out for Thanksgiving for students and staff. So one thing I want to point out is that Governor Cooper is expected to make an announcement about what reopening a school will look like tomorrow on July 1st. And then, of course, you're going to hear a long presentation on what reopening school may look like and potential scenarios. And so based on the feedback that from the decision from Governor Cooper and the decision for the board moving forward, it is conceivable that you all may see a need for more remote instruction days, particularly for cleaning of our buildings, for some social distancing. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there, that our current calendar has 8 remote instruction days, but our calendar would not change. Our calendar would still have instructional days for students. I could just imagine a scenario where we may have more remote instructional days based on whatever option for reopening you all vote on and decide. So that is our traditional calendar. Any questions about the traditional calendar?
Sam,
may I?
Sounds like that might have been Ms. Burke.
Yes, it was. Did someone else want to speak?
Well, Leah Crowley will follow you, Ms. Burke.
Okay, thank you so much. Sam, I just wanted you to show us again the members of the committee that helped to create these calendars for our view.
So Trish McManus, our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Roseborough, Area Superintendent, Nicolette Grant, Chief Academic Officer, Effie McMillan, Executive Director for Equity, Dr. Hales is Title I, Lauren Richards is Operations, Andy Kraft is Testing and Accountability, and then Brenda Bourne with Human Resources. And then we've got representation from all 3 levels of our schools, both at the principal and teacher level.
Do we normally have more teachers than what we have represented on this calendar committee, or is this the norm?
That's a good question, Ms. Burke. This is my first time going through this exercise in this role, so I can't speak to who was on the calendar committee previously.
And I'm also wondering if we normally have some parents as well.
I am not aware of us having parents on the calendar committee. Typically, from what I understand, we put it up on our website for a vote. At least the previous year, that was our practice, in order to get feedback from all of our stakeholders.
And excuse me, Ms. Burke, but Sam, we already have a calendar posted, is that right?
We did. The board had already voted on the calendar before I came into this role.
So this calendar was not an effort to have a new calendar. It was really only prompted because of the new guidance about remote learning and the realization that we needed to adjust for flu season and COVID. So it was a little unusual. Usually a calendar committee starts work in December and January, and this really came about basically in late April and May. So that's not an excuse, it's just a clarification.
Thank you for the clarification. I was just asking about the committee because this is a very unique situation, and this calendar will have to, we will have to, of course, adapt and adjust to the COVID-19 virus that we're dealing with today. And I just wanted to make sure that teachers had, that they were totally and completely representing their thoughts and their positions on this calendar. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Chair Woodbury, could we pass, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Board Member Crowley, I had a question about, we days off from Friday to Monday. In turn, the extracurriculars that are offered, some of them revenue producing, like school plays or musicals. And in those instances, or sporting events on Friday nights, and in those out of participation, if we're off to events are
Could you place that in the chat for us, Ms. Crowley? I think it, okay. And while you do that, Chair Woodbury, is it okay for Dion, if you'll allow Dion Jenkins to give an update on Governor Cooper's signature of the flexibility legislation he signed yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, Dion.
Yes, good morning again, Board. I just wanted to make you aware that the Senate Bill 113, which was an education omnibus bill, which included a lot of different things, including calendar flexibility, was approved by the governor yesterday. So as a part of that bill, it allows for local school districts to, if they believe that it's necessary in the interest of student safety, to add additional remote instruction days beyond the 5 days required by the original calendar legislation, so long as it's in the interest of health and safety. So I just wanted to make you aware that that calendar flexibility was approved by the governor yesterday.
If we'll get to Ms. Crowley's question when she puts it in the chat. Sorry, Ms. Crowley, you're kind of breaking up. We do have two other calendars we need to bring to your attention for brief discussion. So quickly, Dr. Roseborough's out this week, and so Trish McManus and I are just going to share really quickly the Restart Schools calendar. Again, this is one you all approved a restart calendar several months ago for several of our restart schools. The only change from the traditional calendar to the restart calendar is that they will have August 5th, 6th, 7th, and 10th. The teachers will come back early for really kind of differentiated professional development just for those schools. And so it's more front-loaded workshop time where staff can get prepared for students. So that would be a slight variation. Everything else in the calendar is the same for the restart schools and traditional schools. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Any questions about the restart calendar? All right, and then lastly, I've got Principal Joey Hurl with the Early and Middle College on. The Early and Middle College follows the follows the Forsyth Tech College schedule. I'm going to pull that up, but he will talk you through just a couple of the changes really quickly if there are any questions for members of the board. So Joey, are you available?
Yes, Sam, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. Sam, can you pop up that calendar on the screen real quick?
You got it.
So while Sam's doing that, I do want to let you know that I'll talk briefly about this calendar, but we have the exact same number, 180 student days, 14 reserve days, 10 leave, 4 break, and 11 holidays as the traditional calendar. The thing that's different with our calendar is that because our students have to align their high school schedules with their college schedules, we have to end our first semester in December so that our students can start with new high school and college classes when they return in January. And so by having to end first semester approximately a week to a week and a half earlier than the rest of the district, where they end in January, we have historically started about a week to a week and a half earlier. So this calendar has students returning on August the 10th. Last year they came back on August the 8th, so very similar to what we've done in the past. There are some days that Forsyth Tech is closed that make it unable for us to have students on campus on those days. We try to make those days teacher work days. All those days are in October the 12th and 13th. That is fall break for Forsyth Tech. It works out that it's the end of our first quarter, so it's a couple teacher work days to get report cards ready for that. And March the 16th through the 19th, same if you'll scroll down a little bit, we have to take spring break when the college takes spring break, and college spring break is the 16th through the 19th. So that's when we have our spring break. This proposed calendar has pretty balanced quarters, 44 and 45 days in quarter 1 and quarter 2, and 45 and 46 days in quarter 3 and quarter 4. It's, like I said, it's pretty much what we've done in years past, but we do typically start a little earlier so that we can finish in December with first semester. But it does meet the exact same number of days, so nobody can say, well, I'm a teacher at the early college, I work more days or I have to work less days. It all adds up to the same amount in the end. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions you may have about our proposed calendar. I will add, we did put in the same remote learning days for the third week of February as the rest of the district. And we also aren't returning with students until January the 11th to give that extra week for winter break to be in line with the rest of the district for that. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Earl. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I would like permission to, Board Member Crowley was making a suggestion, which I think is pretty good. Her suggestion was to maybe move remote learning days to Mondays versus Friday, because if we were to reinstitute plays, ball games, and those kinds of things, it might make it difficult for children to get to school for those activities, which are usually on Friday evenings and the later part of the week. So it might make it more difficult for them to get to those events if they're in a remote learning status. So that's a suggestion to consider for the 7th when we bring it back for approval. Okay? I hope I reflected that correctly. Thank you.
All right, Chair Woodbury, so I'm going to pull up the presentation for the reopening committee if there are no more questions for calendar.
Okay, thank you. So the last discussion item is the reopening of the school options by Bill Powell and Jan Atkinson.
Yes, Chair Woodbury, and I would like to open by saying I want to thank so many of our staff members and especially you all, our Board of Education, for supporting all of the work that went into overall a positive experience for most of our children in the spring. And we cannot doubt that some children did not access learning in the spring as we had hoped. But overall, we did the very, very best we could under the circumstances from March 14th until the close of school. And there were so many actions that had to occur on behalf of staff, from cleaning to getting back in schools, distribution of technology. You all led us in a great way by starting off with a meeting that allowed us it really untied our hands to serve children. And so I want to thank everyone for that experience. But since that time, we have received guidance from the state, actually the Department of Health and Human Services, and that guidance must be operationalized for the reopening of school. So we've had teams, committee members, which has included parents, teachers, principals, assistant principals, maintenance employees, central office staff, leading many, many committees to operationalize the guidance that we've received and to hopefully bring you some ideas about a positive reopening. This presentation is certainly a planning document. We appreciate the special committee that was appointed by you, Chair Woodbury. We met weekly to provide an update and get very good feedback. That committee was led by Chair Marilyn Parker. Members were Dana Jones, Deanna Kaplan, Andrea Bramer, and Elizabeth Motsinger. And most of you listened in on the presentations as well. It wasn't the committee solely, but certainly this committee allowed us an opportunity to share on a weekly basis updates from various committees working to operationalize the guidance that we received. So today, it's a lengthy presentation, so we hope that we don't go overboard, but we feel we need to give you as much information as possible. We will certainly bring back a more definitive plan once we hear from Governor Cooper. At this time, it's been announced July 1st, tomorrow, regarding our opening. The co-leads and steering committee has been made up of Bill Powell, Janet Atkinson, myself, Deion Jenkins, our general counsel, and our chief of staff, Sam Mills, and the many, many committee members that participate. We've actually had over 200 employees and parents participating in developing this plan to bring to you today. Certainly not perfect. We need some work on it. We want to have discussion and dialogue and bring that plan back to you on the 7th. But again, it's been a task to get to this point, and we hope that are able to walk away with information to make good decisions in the future. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Bill or Janet at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to present to you this morning, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation, and we'll start with Deion Jenkins.
Good morning again, Board. Sam, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we just wanted to remind the Board, as well as members of the public who might be watching and listening into the meeting today, as to the context and the why behind the plan that's going to be discussed today. So as you know, the Department of Health and Human Services has been working very closely with the Governor's Office as well as the State Board of Education in developing some guidelines for schools to reopen in the fall. Those first guidelines were published on June the 8th, and then with the most recent executive orders regarding face coverings, those guidelines were updated on June the 24th. But it really is a collaborative document from those main agencies. Within that, there is the acknowledgement that based on the research, children are less likely to contribute to the spread of the virus. However, the risk of spread is still there. There's still that possibility. So there are a number of recommendations and requirements in these guideline documents that schools must comply with, depending upon which plan we reopen under in the fall. Next slide. So what you see on the screen is the decision tree that the Governor's Office will use in making a decision on how to reopen in the fall. As Dr. Harrison mentioned, we anticipate that decision to be made by July the 1st. And ultimately, the Governor will say, as a state, we're opening under either Plan A, Plan B, or Plan C. Next slide. If we on the screen here is a kind of an overview of the different plans. Plan A is the least restrictive of those plans, and Plan C is the most restrictive. And then Plan B is somewhere in between. It's the hybrid version. So all of the requirements that are in the guideline document that we briefed at a previous meeting are applicable to Plan A. There are some additional, more restrictive guidelines in place for a Plan B. And then, of course, if we're open under Plan C, then we will continue with remote learning as we have been doing over the last few months. Like I said, the governor will make his announcement of which plan we're going to reopen under on July the 1st. But I do think it's important to note that school districts do have the discretion, school boards have the discretion to reopen under a more restrictive plan than what the governor says if one is available. So, for example, if we reopen under Plan A, then school systems do have the flexibility to choose to reopen under something more similar to a Plan B or a Plan C. So I do want to make you aware that we have that discretion. We just cannot go to a lesser restrictive plan than what the governor mandates. Next slide. And so in this planning document, there's a list of requirements and recommendations that are outlined. All of the requirements are things that are non-negotiables, the things that school districts have to do regardless of the plan that we reopen under. But then there are some recommendations that school districts can choose to adopt in their plans to reopen in order to help further slow the spread of the virus. And so all of the requirements that are listed are required for Plan A. There's some additional requirements for Plan B, and then again, the recommendations for school systems to consider. Next slide. In that guidance document, there were several other resources that were listed that helped kind of guide that framework. There's several documents from the CDC, the Public Health Toolkit that was published, as well as the Light Our Way Forward guidance document that was released by the Department of Public Instruction. And so these are all additional resources that we can make available for you if you have questions or would like to review. Are there any initial questions for me? Okay, well, in that case, I will turn it back over to Jan.
And Dr. Hairston, I didn't know if you need to say any more about our committees.
I do not, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. The next we will have Michael Pesh, who will discuss student wellness.
Good morning, board members. Dr. Hairston. Thank you. The overall task of the Student Wellness Subcommittee was to develop health and wellness protocols across all settings. The outcome is a proposed comprehensive plan that covers activities from the entry screening process to dismissal. And it also includes activities related to services that are going to be provided in the home. The total cost of this wellness plan proposal is approximately $5.2 million. Next slide. As we discussed last week, the largest costs and challenges are associated with the recommended healthcare coordinators that would be needed in each building, as well as the costs associated with the required screening process. And we discussed this in quite a bit of detail last week, so I'll just leave it at that for now. Next slide. So as important as the physical and environmental domains of wellness are, the social and emotional domains will help all students, families, and staff to feel safe, as well as be safe. So addressing these domains will be critical to student achievement and success. So we have SEAL support staff who will help to develop detailed reentry plans and activities for individuals, and also provide support and resources throughout the school year. The plan will incorporate a trauma-informed care approach. Next slide. The comprehensive plan will address all areas in the school building, including classrooms, hallways, restrooms, offices, and any other common areas. The protocols will provide direction to staff to help them adhere to all health and safety guidelines provided by the state. And that's going to include practicing social distancing, avoiding mixing of classrooms, avoiding sharing of objects throughout the day. Next slide. The health room will provide a safe and clean environment for students who need daily monitoring or care, but aren't exhibiting signs and symptoms of a communicable disease. So the detailed protocols will provide for staff who will need to use this room with new requirements such as barriers, PPE, increased cleaning, and the protocols will discourage the use of the health room, the main office, and hallways as a waiting area for students who feel ill or who are needing to go home. Next slide. We're recommending 1 to 2 large classrooms to be used as isolation rooms. And the reason you need a couple is there's a 24-hour waiting period that's required before cleaning spaces that are occupied by individuals who are suspected of being positive for COVID-19. Staff who become symptomatic at school would be sent home immediately, and students would be placed in the designated isolation room if they're presenting with any kind of symptoms related to COVID-19. So staff would never use this room. Schools do need to...
Can I ask a question, Michael?
Sure.
Is there an employee who is going to be in the isolation room with the student, or is that... I'm not clear on that.
Yep, sure. That was my next point. And that is that staff would need to be identified by the school about who would be the isolation room attendant. And it would be a staff member from the school building, and they would need to be trained in the protocols for that particular setting. So they wouldn't necessarily be there the entire day. Obviously, if there's no one in the room, we wouldn't need a staff member sitting there, but we would need to identify several staff who would then enter the room with a student if we needed to use that space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide. And there'll be occasions when personnel are going to need to enter a student's home to provide services. So when entering the home of a student during the pandemic, it's going to be really important to adhere to all of the recommended guidelines. And those guidelines are there to protect the employee, the student, and other family members who will be residing in the home. So this would be obviously related to hospital homebound staff or any other staff member who needs to enter a home. Right now, we're not entering students' homes. We are going up to the door within 6 feet for certain situations, but this policy that we have created would be to enter the home. And that would require special PPE and training for the staff members.
Michael, may I
Yes.
ask a question, please? This is Board Member Hayes.
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you tell me how long the isolation period is and how is
Yep.
that determined?
Excellent question. And a lot of these will be included in the detailed plan that we'll get to you next week. But that would be a minimal amount of time. Our recommendation is it shouldn't be more than an hour. So this wouldn't be a place that a student would sit all day long. Even if the student, we were having some difficulty trying to locate a guardian or parent, we would try to do that as quickly as possible so that the student could be there and then be sent home immediately. And it could be that there could be more than one student in there as well.
Well, I was going to ask that also, if it would be more than one student, how would we social distance, things like that?
Sure, and this is why we're needing a classroom. We would need a very large space. We would need to obviously practice social distancing fairly far away, 6 feet or more, and we wouldn't want to overcrowd that room. We're hoping that we would only need it for just a few students, but that's the other reason why 2 classrooms would be better than 1. So they would be far apart and would not have any contact with each other.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
And if a parent does not have a way of transporting their child, what happens?
Yes, so excellent question. And, in the past, we would use staff at the school, possibly even in a personal vehicle, to take a child home. We're recommending that personal vehicles not be used for the reason of being able to properly clean that. And also, the social distancing would be a problem in a personal vehicle. So we were recommending some type of vehicle that the school system would use, and that's something that we're still working on, whether that would be type of a smaller bus or a car or something like that. But we have an obligation. The state is telling us that we have an obligation to make sure we get students home who do not have transportation. So this is a problem that we must solve.
Is that requirement to get them home also a requirement for children who are under, say, the age of 8 to be delivered to an adult or older sibling?
So the recommendations, or actually the requirements from the state, don't specify exactly who they need to go to. It's our practice to make sure that we communicate with a guardian when we're doing this. Whenever we transport somebody, we have to have parent permission to do that. Sometimes they will give us permission to leave the child at home with an extended family member, someone who might be an older sibling.
So, yeah, I guess what my mind's playing out. So I work in a grocery store, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I take public transportation. I'm not allowed to bring my cell phone out to the floor while I'm doing whatever my job is.
Mm-hmm.
And my child gets sick. What do we just, does that child stay in isolation till the end of the day?
So those are situations that come up frequently, and that would be a situation where a social worker might go out to the home or to a place of employment to try to locate a guardian. So we do everything we possibly can to get them, especially if we know that they're in a factory, for example, and they have to lock up their phones when they're on the floor, things like that. So we do everything possible to go and locate that guardian.
Okay, I'm just.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
And this is Board Member Kaplan. And so these isolation classrooms, will they be strategically located close to exit doors so they won't have to walk through the halls or whatever to leave? Will there be consideration for that?
Yes, we've considered that. Another reason we're recommending classrooms is classrooms have their own HVAC unit. So a health room shares that with an office. This way that the AC system is isolated to that room. We would prefer that the room have windows that open if possible. We know that not all classrooms have that. We also would prefer that room have an exterior door so that when a student is exiting, we can exit them through the door to leave the school. So yeah, that's something that would be customized for every single campus, because we couldn't identify that room today. We would have to help schools figure out where that would be. But there are some conditions that are recommended for the isolation room.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's just one more slide, and that would be about training. Finally, all of this is going to require quite a bit of training for staff and students to receive adequate information and practicing universal precautions, which we do normally at the beginning of the school year, but also proper use of PPE and recognizing and managing social and emotional issues. So that would have to be a priority the very first days of school, and then it would be practiced throughout the year. I think that might be it. So any other questions? These are all really good questions. Okay, thank you so much.
If there are no further questions, we'll now move to Justin Thornton.
I do have a few questions. This is Board Member Burke. For staff who present symptoms during the school day, Michael did say that they would be sent home. Can you tell us how this will affect us members' sick leave if they have picked up the virus while working at the school and maybe coming into contact with someone with the virus? What kind of protection do we have for staff members?
I think this might be a question for HR. I'm not sure I understand exactly. Protection from keeping them from getting the virus?
If they are sent home, they will have to use their own sick leave, or will the district not deduct their sick days from them because they picked up the virus while working on their job?
Sure. So I think it's hard to determine where exactly if they picked up a virus, if they tested positive. Of course, this is someone who is just presenting a symptom. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily positive for COVID-19, but if they do start exhibiting any of the symptoms listed, we would have to have them go home. For example, a fever. And a fever could be associated with any other kind of medical condition. I think, again, this is something HR could address in terms of how we use that, whether it's sick leave, annual leave. But I do know that if someone is needing to quarantine, for example, that let's say they reported that they've been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19, maybe they're not even experiencing any symptoms. we have discussed the fact that there is a possibility that they can continue to work remotely if they're in that category. I think the discussion had been that if they were actually sick and did test positive for COVID-19, that would be a different situation where they might have to then take sick time for something like that. But I think that's something HR could answer.
I'm just wondering if, for some reason, we were to have an outbreak at a school, and some of the staff members picked up the virus as a result of the well-known outbreak at a particular school. Would the school district have any liability at all for the employees?
Dion, do you want to weigh in on that one?
So from a liability perspective, it really falls under, causation. And so there are some OSHA guidelines that walk us through kind of a step-by-step analysis for determining whether or not an employee who tests positive somehow was exposed in the workplace. And so we would use the OSHA guidelines in making that determination on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. And I also wanted to ask about the isolation room. Believe it or not, sometimes there's a little difficulty reaching parents. And as Board Member Motsinger said, it could be that they're at work, they're not allowed to have their phones handy. It could be a situation where phone numbers are just not correct in Power School. And so if we run into a situation where students are left in the isolation room all day and a parent has you've not been able to reach a parent, how do you get that student home without bringing that student into contact with other students, for example, like riding a bus? What's the plan for that?
So like I said, we would try everything possible to locate a parent or guardian to get permission to take them home. There are circumstances where, in emergency situations, we've been able to transport students without that permission. And again, Dion could speak to that if we need to. But for the most part, we will go out, like I said, not just phone calls, but go and try to locate a person to get word to them. Even in that situation, if we had someone there longer, we are still working on the plan of exactly how we're going to get them home in a state vehicle or some type of small bus to be able to transport them home. It is our responsibility to do that, and that's something that we're going to be working on transportation with to resolve.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And now we will have Justin Thornton.
Good morning, School Board and Dr. Harrison. So we've been working on the cleaning and sanitizing plans. This covers staffing and training. For staffing, we're additional 4-hour custodial employed at all locations to assist with the labor needs, but for the new sanitation protocols, such as disinfecting high-touch areas, refilling consumables, and assisting with bathroom cleaning and disinfecting. And then to train, we would need to get out some materials to distribute virtually to all of our staff. We're currently working with our technology team to work on a system to share and track all this information. Next slide. And protocol. So as part of the new protocol, we would need to get a bottle of disinfectant cleaner that meets the EPA standards to assist with the sanitizing of high-touch areas and hard surfaces, and also mandate that all employees assist with cleaning and disinfecting of classroom materials and furnishings. Next slide. So we work on school supplies and delivery, which we would be mandating that delivery personnel that works for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools be screened at their assigned work location upon arrival, so they would not need to be re-screened when they arrive at the school location. Requesting that all outside agency deliveries are made after school hours to eliminate cross contact, and recommending that all school orders in bulk quantity to cut down on the amount of deliveries needed. Next slide. Working on classroom furniture and other classroom items, mandating the removal of all non-issue Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools furniture to be removed from the building, recommending that classroom rugs are stored on site because of the challenges with disinfecting of soft goods. The operations team has been developing guidelines for classroom seating charts based on our social distancing. We have worked on that, and we're hopefully getting out some pictures of these areas that we've staged very shortly, and also working on identifying and providing a means of marking off out-of-use furniture. Next slide. Changing some contract cleaning contracts, asking for an additional 4-hour position at each site to help with those high-touch areas, restocking of consumables and overall cleaning needs, and also asking for a modification to include daily classroom mopping as opposed to weekly mopping. We currently do daily spot mopping, but if we eat and breakfast and lunch in the classroom, there would be a need to completely mop those classrooms daily. Next slide. Which brings us to the cost associated with all this. So our hand sanitizer stands, dispensers, consumables, cleaning, disinfecting chemicals, hydrostatic sprayers, plexiglass shields, etc. Estimated cost would be $1.14 million. Employee additions and contract modifications, estimated cost would be $1.84 million. Tape and other items to mark off furniture would be estimated at around $35,000. And then if we would need to move excess furniture off-site, we would have to get a storage facility and additional movers. We lack the labor to do that in-house. That would be an additional estimated $1.5 million to come in at a total estimated cost of $4.515 million. Next slide. So that should be the end of the presentation. I know it was brief and quick. Are there any questions?
I have one question. Are we subcontracting this out? Or do we have additional staff to be able to do this?
What part are you, Ms. Carol Hayes, which part do you mean, the furniture, the cleaning,
Yeah.
which part?
Yes, mainly, furnishing, cleaning, moving, all of that.
We more than likely have the staff to move the furniture out of the building. We probably would have to hire a temp service to help with a little manpower because we would have a surge. And the problem we have with the furniture is that there is so much in the classroom that we have to clear out to social distance. The challenge is probably securing the storage bins to store the furniture because our warehouse, we have the one warehouse, we have the technology warehouse, and then we have the Idlewood warehouse, and it's pretty packed over there with school supplies, instructional materials, and so the cost would really be the quick moving in a hurry kind of thing. So we would probably we wouldn't hire people. We probably would use a temp service to bring in extra hands to get those things moved.
Okay, that answers my question. I just wondered, if we were going to try to rely on staff that we had in the school system or, with so much involved, how we were going to direct it.
Yeah, we probably would not be able to have them totally responsible. And I think Kaplan, Board Member Kaplan had a question, and then Board Member Powell.
Yes, thank you. So the cost associated with the cleaning supplies, does this also include the cost that it would be to disinfect the school buses, all the transportation vehicles?
Justin or Daryl, could you all, Lauren, one of you all answer that?
Yes, ma'am. No, the cost to disinfect the school buses would be separate. That's in transportation. This is strictly school and office buildings.
Okay, so will we see a slide of the cost for that?
Yes, ma'am, that'll be discussed.
Okay, great, thanks.
Board Member Crowley, you had a question? Okay, great. And so Janet, if we'll move to the next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin. And the next presentation is ours about our schedule options for school during COVID-19. Next slide, please, Sam. As Dion mentioned to you before, based on CDC and DHS guidelines, we will either be in one of three plans or in between. The ideal plan, of course, would be Plan A, which is minimal social distancing, or even no plan at all. However, right now that is definitely not the case. Every single state is supposed to have a Plan B, and every single district is supposed to have a Plan B, and that would be your moderate social distancing, where you're mixing students as minimally as possible. You're keeping your distance from folks and adhering to all of the guidelines. And Plan C would be where we are totally remote learning, as we have been for this past spring. So right now we are in Plan B, and we will see what the governor says tomorrow. But as of today, we are still in Plan B. We're making a plan for Plan B. Next slide, please. So with that, we have two scenarios under Plan B. So our first scenario is that all preschoolers, first, second, and third graders, exceptional students in self-contained programs, students who are attending special schools, and all of our occupational course of study students and our EL students would attend school daily Monday through Thursday at their assigned school. Next slide, please. 4th through 12th graders in EC Resource would attend school on site Monday through Thursday, but this would be every other week, A week and B week. They would be in a cohort, either cohort A or cohort B at their assigned school. And they would either attend A week or B week, and they would be attending school remotely on their off-site week. And as you see, there's an asterisk. Originally, we had Monday through Friday, but in listening and talking with many of our teachers, this is a massive undertaking in order to do a blended model where you have students on campus and then also have students who are remote. So in this situation, Fridays would be the day that teachers would have for planning, for checking in on students. We would even have, our social workers need to check in on families and things of that sort. We would use Fridays for the days to do check-in, for planning, and what have you. But during that time, students would still have instruction. They would have assignments. Next slide, please. In Plan B scenario 2, as we said before, preschoolers through 8th graders this time would be attending school daily. This way, we would be trying to get as many students back in school as possible. But in order to do this, we would be utilizing classrooms in all of our school buildings, because you still have to have social distancing. So you would have no more than usually 15, maximum 18 students in a classroom at a time, which would not be your full class. So therefore, we would have our preschool through 3rd graders in our elementary schools. Our 4th and 5th graders would have to be in our middle schools, and our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders would be in our high schools. Next slide, please. And then our 9th through 12th grade in EC Resource would be remote. However, one thing, and this was in listening, and we heard this from one of our board members last week as well, we know that our high schoolers are going to need additional support, just as our younger students do. And so for students who are at risk, we would hopefully be able to provide tutoring and support for them at nearby community centers, which you'll hear more about from Effie McMillan in the parent engagement piece. Next slide. Are there any questions?
Yes, this is Elizabeth, and I'm wondering how you would define which children are emotionally at risk in high school, because my guesstimate is that's all of them. Or, I mean, from what my understanding is that our students are struggling mightily, and that our high school students are struggling as much, if not more, than any other population.
So Ms. Singer, that would really be determinant. Some of our students, we realize are on various plans, 504 plans, not necessarily IEPs, for various supports. And also we would rely on our parents. So we would open it up to as many as possible. We actually have had several parents sign up. You notice our registration for virtual is heavily populated with high school students. Nearly 2,000 students at this point. And then we also have many parents who've emailed me and said, I want to choose the virtual platform. I'm just waiting to see what the end plan will be. So some parents feel confident that their students are fine. So we will rely heavily on parental support, but also we would also look for our children who are at risk. The McKinney-Vento Act identifies children who are homeless. We also have children who are identified by our counselors, psychologists, and social workers. We have children who are identified through our social services department. So we use a strategy to identify and basically opening it up to parents who just feel like their children need some supports. We don't want to close that off.
Do you have any sense of the number of places there would be for children in community centers based on this plan?
So Effie McMillan will cover a little bit of that when she
Okay.
shows her engagement, but we have a number of centers that will step up, and of course they can't handle all of our children, but certainly we want to provide some support for at-risk students, and academically a little easier to identify than those that are socially, emotionally in need.
Thank you.
Say Ms. Parker has a question.
Yes, have we worked through a plan? If we do the A week, B week, I know teachers will have some students at home working remotely while they have some in the classroom. If we worked out a plan that we're going to have teachers, like 1 week they will be doing the classroom, but another teacher will be monitoring their students remotely or something, because I can just see that trying to teach in the classroom and then trying to keep up with all of your students that are doing remote learning being just about a 24/7 job. Have we gotten that far in the planning on how we'll deal with that?
Yes, ma'am. Our Nicolette Grant will go over that a little bit. And that was what we heard from teachers about the Friday opportunity to use, and we know from Board Member Crowley's suggestion is Monday, to use, the suggestion is to use a day where teachers can have remote learning with flexibility of the calendar that affords us an opportunity to be more flexible, but also that they need additional planning so they can plan for children who are in school and out of school. So she will share that model at her with her subcommittee.
And also,
okay, great, thank you.
And one other thing I just want to add too is that using the A week, B week, and people only going 4 days a week will allow for cleaning of the buildings to happen on Friday. So when you're talking about additional staff, we wouldn't always need a large amount of staff to clean over the weekends. We can use some of our own folks. So that will help. And then it also may help as far as transportation, if whether it's Monday or Friday, buses are not being used as much during that time.
And Board Member Berg had a question.
I wanted to ask about the tutoring that could possibly take place at the community centers. Will we be providing our certified teachers for this tutoring?
Yes, ma'am. We would hire, that would be a part of the CARES teams that would go out. The CARES teams will consist of supporting parents. I mean, it's a team in the community helping parents understand the process and how to best structure remote learning. And we would hire certified teachers for those tutorial sessions for children in the community. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And Ms. Motsinger had a question?
Yes, I see in Plan B about community centers for high school students. One of the, of course, big concerns is that I think a lot of people are thinking about parents at work and, you know, if we did the first plan with students from the 4th grade through the 12th grade, are community centers still prepared to be open for alternating weeks for all those different children?
Effie can better address that. She's been working with community members, but I will say that this is a situation where we're asking those people who open their centers or churches or their churches.
Exactly. It's going to be, we're going to need huge buy-in.
It really is going to take, you know, it's really going to take the entire community working together. And so we can provide tutors, but we would count on the sites to provide the supervision to ensure social distancing, ensure that children are managed. We would be able to provide some food and meals to those sites for children. So it will take a lot of effort on behalf of those that open the site, as well as our teachers to manage those sites. And then, of course, we'll have limited numbers.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no additional questions, we will move now to instruction. And Nicolette Grant could not be with us today. She had a conflict, but David Sisk is here and he will be presenting for her. David?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Woodbury, members of the board, and Dr. Hairston. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present. So what I want to do is walk you through what we've been doing in instructional services. We have 18 subcommittees and literally well over 100 people who have dedicated time, a family really, to working through this plan. So we're going to share a little bit of an overview with you this morning. So our task to begin with instruction, with the blended learning model, is really to develop an option for Plan B. And so the results that we have are really focused on personalized learning, focusing on different instructional models to support different learning environments and the PD that our administrators, teachers, and support staff need. The cost for this is approximately $15.5 million. Mainly that's dedicated to the ELA and math resources that we need. And we also need high quality digital resources to support both a Plan B and a Plan C option. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you see in front of you here is a comparison of what a cohort A and a cohort B would see under a blended instruction model. And so this is the Plan B option, depending on which scenario the board chooses. So cohort A on the left-hand side in that column, these are the students who would be on week A. And you can see we've got staggered arrival times built in because we know there's going to be most likely potentially a lot of transportation delays with various routes, numerous routes running. So in the morning, you would have an intervention enrichment block of time where you could be working with those students that possibly need additional support, or the students who are ready to move a little bit faster, so that would give you some flexibility at that time of day. And the third bullet on the left universal use of Canvas as a learning management platform. I can't emphasize enough how important Canvas is. And the analogy that I like to use with Canvas is it's a vehicle for learning. And if you think about an SUV or an ATV, for example, that type of vehicle, an SUV, can traverse multiple terrains. So it's at home on asphalt, on sand, whether you go up to the mountains. So it gives you a lot of variety with the way that you can deliver instruction. So I did want to emphasize how important Canvas is and the universal adoption of Canvas. We're also going to focus on the personalized learning aspect going forward, and that would be both in a face-to-face and in a virtual setting. And I'm going to connect this to virtual momentarily. But we want to make sure we emphasize that personalized learning approach where you look at the individual specific needs of each learner and you adapt your instruction and you give them options based on where they are with their learning so they can progress and move forward. And the second from the last bullet is the differentiated groupings. We will potentially have smaller groups of students in schools. So you're going to be able to focus on really those differentiated groupings based on the needs of the students. And you can differentiate a lot of different ways based on learning styles, the progress that a particular child has made in the content area. But we're going to have that option under the cohort A with the face-to-face instruction. And then we're going to emphasize the mini lessons with those smaller groups of students while they are with us in cohort A. And they're going to continue with this work as you go into cohort B. So if you move your attention to the right-hand side, the column with cohort B, this is what it would look like virtually. So this is what cohort B would be doing while cohort A is in school face-to-face. So the first bullet, again, I want to emphasize, this is a continuation of the face-to-face learning. Using Canvas, both across cohort A and cohort B, allows that continuation to be seamless. So we're really emphasizing the use of Canvas throughout. Students are responsible for their own learning, but they're not on their own. So the learning, the face-to-face work that they've gotten the previous week, the support that they get from the Canvas course, the way we set up the different modules in Canvas to be very direct and specific to help them really highlight the pathway where they navigate through that course on Canvas is so important. But it's also a really good scaffolding support for students when they're working at home more independently. And so the fourth bullet down the right-hand side, I want to emphasize this also. We're talking about learning pathways. So students would have various options, various pathways to explore different content concepts and different standards. And within those pathways, we have, in education parlance, we have a concept called playlists. So this is not like a playlist that you would pop into your CD player or your MP3 player. This is a playlist that's really a graduated learning approach where students come in to a particular playlist. They have a pre-assessment that gives them a sense of where they are with their learning. And then based on that pre-assessment, they are then given options for learning activities. So it's a really good way to differentiate that off-site, that virtual instruction based on the needs of the students, and they can do this independently. And the last bullet, I think Jan mentioned this earlier, it will be, I think, difficult. This is something that we're going to have to navigate, but we feel strongly, we know strongly, that our students at home still need a level of virtual support. So they are not completely on their own with no teacher check-in weekly. We feel like that those students need to have many virtual check-ins scheduled. This could be on every other day for a short amount of time with small groups of students. But just to have that check-in is so important to keep students engaged, to help them have that family connection with the school and their colleagues and their peers in the classroom. So we would have to utilize additional staff in the schools because teachers are going to have a lot on their plates. I believe that comment came up earlier. But we would have to utilize teacher assistants, social workers, Dr. Harrison mentioned that FE is working on a care team. That could be a part of this in certain schools as well. But that is such an important component to support instruction and the engagement and support the social and emotional needs of students. So that's just a really brief overview of what cohort A and cohort B would look like. And I did want to emphasize that it's a continuation of learning when those students transition to the virtual environment at home. Next slide, please. So the next part of my presentation really focuses on the remote instruction plan. And so this would be really Plan C option when all students are learning virtually. So the result of the work that we've done is really to focus on equipping our students and our staffs to support high quality standards instruction. Again, focusing on the personalized blending learning opportunity. And I want to emphasize as we get into the next slides that this is really a continuation of some of the work that you would see with the cohort B option who may be working from home alternating days. And the cost of this, again, is approximately $15.5 million. And again, we have a high need for those high quality digital resources to support our students in this virtual environment. Next page, please. Thank you. So what does remote learning look like? Well, first, all the instruction will be delivered virtually. And over the last couple months, we've probably used the term synchronous and asynchronous more than we have in our entire lives. But I wanted to give you a brief overview of what that looks like. Left-hand column, you see synchronous. So synchronous instruction is the instruction where we are working directly in the moment with the students. What we're doing right now is a synchronous environment because we're all working at the same time. And so the first part of this would be a daily whole group check-in. Now we're doing whole group more than likely at the beginning of the day for most schools, depending on the different environments, because schools have different possibilities and different scheduling issues that they may have to work through. But we're recommending that we do a daily whole group check-in at the beginning of the day, really focus on the social emotional learning, the team building aspect of this, giving weekly direction activities, something that the group can do together. Because you really want to support that engagement piece and really that family atmosphere and really nourish that idea of the group working together. So the students feel the belonging, the connection with their peers. The scheduling with synchronous, we would focus on small group instruction across the content areas with Microsoft Teams. Working synchronously is best when you have those small groups working together because it gives the students more time for individual attention with that teacher. But we can also differentiate that groups in Microsoft Teams with the platform that we're using, and we can set up breakout groups. But we can also really craft those groups, much like you would do in a face-to-face environment, but based on the learning needs of the students. Or possibly you can differentiate those groups based on the learning styles. So there's a lot of different ways that you could do that. And then those groups could also be focused on the intervention piece, students who may be reading half a grade level behind, who need more assistance, or an enrichment group, a student group that's maybe reading in front of their peers and needs some more challenging opportunities. And we can also, this is a really interesting function with Canvas, and it's more about, it's a higher level function, so the training of our staff on this is paramount, but you can also set up small collaborative groups. The teacher can facilitate that in Canvas, where when you have the breakout rooms, if you're using Microsoft Teams, you can do it synchronously. You can have the breakout rooms where those students are then able to work with their peers in a collaborative group and then come back together possibly at a later time if you plug in and connect with them asynchronously, or you can do it synchronously. But you can bring those collaborative groups back to really connect and complete that collaborative learning opportunity. And again, I'm emphasizing Canvas. as the platform that we're using through our elective courses and our encore. You would potentially have students rotating through those encore, those special classes at the elementary level. And if we go to an option where we have a certain percentage or a certain grade level cohort of students in schools with smaller groups, it's possible the elective or the special teacher could go into that classroom. Or if you want to practice higher social distancing, the encore or the special teacher, especially at elementary, could provide that class, that special class, virtually during the day, and the students stay in their classroom. And so that's just another option of this, and really focusing on the remote learning aspect of this, providing those options for encore and elective courses. And then the specialist support. So we would schedule synchronous specialist support for our students who are EL students. That's my specialty, but also looking at our AG students and our students who have special or differentiated needs. You could schedule that as an additional supplemental synchronous session. The scheduling for that could be difficult based on the numbers of special support staff, EL teachers, EC teachers that you have in the schools, but that is possible. Now, under the Remote Learning Plan C, the must-do asynchronous piece of this, again, Canvas is used to support that personalized learning playlist, and a well-designed Canvas class with teachers who are trained to use that platform well, and students who are also trained on how to navigate that platform well, would really support a rich asynchronous learning environment through those playlists and through those learning pathways. So the students would utilize those playlists to demonstrate how they're progressing in acquiring the new content and the knowledge, and demonstrating their achievement. There's often a post-assessment at the end of each playlist that helps you understand what you have learned. And then for our younger students, our pre-K through second grade students, we are cognizant that those students often need those hands-on materials, and those students need those packets of information that they may not be able, they can't get remotely. However, that's something that we would have to plan and schedule, either for the families to pick them up or to deliver them to some of those younger students during this period of time for asynchronous. And then there's some options under remote learning, so some extension activities. So really focusing on extending their knowledge of those standards-based learning activities, so giving them activities that would help them possibly play a game with a new learning concept or a new mathematical concept that they've learned, possibly take a virtual field trip. There's a lot of wonderful options out there for virtual field trips or simulations. So this just gives you an overview of what that remote learning looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, so with the Virtual Academy, I just want to touch on this briefly. The Virtual Academy will be focused on competency-based learning. And there are a lot of similar aspects of remote learning that are duplicated in the Virtual Academy. There's also a mastery-based grading component of this, and I just want to mention briefly that the mastery-based grading is very important for our students, because it can really help provide a positive and empowered learning experience for students. With a traditional grading approach, if a student has a low level of understanding or concept on the front end, they may be graded lower on the front end of their learning, and then as they improve, they receive higher grades. However, their average grade may not adequately represent their learning. So under mastery-based grading, you really be looking at grading those students based on whether they master that concept. In the Virtual Academy, they have planned a lot of wonderful professional development for the staff there to help them become experts in using the tools with Canvas and really figuring out how to navigate those courses and set them up in a very meaningful way. Next slide, please. So just briefly, I just want to talk about the foundation of our plan. Again, Canvas is the learning management system that we're using. And when you think about the SUV analogy that I used earlier, the professional development piece of this is really kind of maintaining the engine, if you will. The blended and remote learning piece of this is really emphasizing the capabilities of that vehicle of Canvas. And then the ongoing job embedded professional development and the coaching piece, those are really the tune-ups that we would do to our Canvas vehicle. Next slide, please. So this is just a brief overview, and I'm not going to go through this because of out of an interest of time, but I just want to give you a sense of what the playlist looked like. So briefly, you can see task 1, there's a pre-assessment, help the student understand where they are with that particular concept. Task 2 would give them various options going forward, and they move through these tasks until they show mastery of that particular concept. And this concept is on, I believe, different types of blocks. And then once they get to task 5, they have different options for continuing their learning with that concept. Just a really brief example of what that playlist looks like. Next slide, please. And so briefly, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of Canvas. This is what a teacher would see when they log into the Canvas professional development that we plan on rolling out in the latter half of July. So they would have different modules that they would work through, focused on helping them understand and better navigating Canvas. There's also a learning checklist piece, really evaluating their own personal learning, and then also their evaluation of the course, and they are issued a certificate on completion. Next slide, please. So this is what really a module, a module page would look like. And so each row would be a particular module, getting started on Canvas, an introduction to online learning, because we have teachers that are, some that are very familiar with online learning, some are just learning online learning. But this just gives you a snapshot of what those various modules would look like once you get into the Canvas professional development course. Next slide, please. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes, Ms. Kaplan.
I think we have Board Member Kaplan.
Yes, I do. Thank you. This just looks great. I'm really excited about Canvas, and I really like the individualized personal learning that it's going to offer. My question is, will Canvas also give us a beginning of the year test across the district so that we can kind of get a baseline as a district about where we are?
There is some required testing, and I don't know, Dave, if you're prepared to address that. I don't know if Andy Kraft was able to make the call today, but there is some required testing by the state that we will have to do as soon as we return. David, are you prepared to answer that?
I can only speak to the capabilities of Canvas. There isn't a functioning Canvas, but I think what Ms. Kaplan is asking is more of a state level testing question. So I would have to defer to Andy on that.
Okay.
Dr. Harrison, I'm on the call. I'm happy to speak to that if you'd like.
Would you do that? Yes.
Sure. So our rising fourth graders will be required to take the third grade EOG at the beginning of the year. There will be an option for students in grades 4 through 12 to take last year's EOG or EOC, and that would be for the purpose of math placement to determine if those students should be appropriately placed in the band.
Available intelligent all-wheel drive, an in-vehicle Wi-Fi hotspot, and a new available crew van. Say hello to the new 2020 Ford Transit.
And now, Transit is built for the road forward with great savings like these.
You are required to wear a mask in public places all